blaring in my ears, engines roaring, 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 the horizon's drawing near. Pedal to the floor, no more feet in the door, gonna drive right out of this bitter night. I'm a constant seeker in Converse sneakers, always chasing sunsets.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Deb. Happy birthday to you.
She's almost smiling at us.
Almost. She did take her headphones off. Hi, my name's David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show called Nonprofit Insider. Nonprofit Insider is a show with executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I myself have worked in the nonprofit world for over 30 years, and in those years I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that provide critical services and benefits to our community that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. So, Deb, I think Frankie's just hanging out this weekend. They're not doing anything special and just kind of taking it easy. Yeah, so they've been busy. Good. So, this week we have a guest with us, and Delilah Purpur.
Pretty good. Purpur.
Purpur. Okay, I got the accent wrong. I'm sorry. Delilah is the executive director of the Heart of Biddeford. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
So is the Heart of Biddeford a medical group?
Heart, I get it. No, it's a Main Street organization.
Okay, so it's part of the Main Street grouping in Maine.
That's right. We have 10 designated Main Street programs in Maine, plus another almost 20 network communities, but that's part of 2,200 across the country, all under the National Main Street Program.
And the Maine Development Foundation, they have some involvement with that?
They are the umbrella organization in Maine.
Okay.
Each state needs to have a state coordinating organization, and they do that for Maine.
So what does the Heart of Biddeford do?
We are a downtown revitalization organization, and fortunately we get to use the Main Street model to do that. And it does economic and community development, all keeping historic preservation as the underlying value. So when you're talking about developing a downtown or revitalizing it, you're keeping the sense of place. You're keeping the buildings, not knocking down the historic buildings. And you're building community from the ground up. It's a very community-driven effort.
And you've been the executive director there for?
A little over 4 years. Yes.
Yeah. And what's that been like? What were you doing before this?
I'd actually gone to grad school in education to work in higher education. Did that for about 16 years, mostly out in California, and some on the East Coast as well. And when I moved to Maine a little over 7 years ago with my husband, who was a Mainer, I was mostly doing consulting work, helping nonprofits and university settings do diversity training, strategic planning, that kind of work. And my daughter was born, and about 3 years in, I started to consider work options, and I'd certainly loved the work of Heart of Biddeford. And they were looking for an interim position. And I said, that sounds perfect, 20 hours a week. So I got to kind of get back into the regular workforce after having my daughter with me for most of her first 3 years. And just found that I loved it. And within 3 months, we started talking about making it a, full-time commitment position.
So what's been your, what I call the aha moment? What's been the piece that's been the biggest surprise and most eye-opening for you?
Well, mostly that I get to and have to keep learning constantly.
Right.
I probably shouldn't admit this publicly, but when
we are on live.
I know, who's listening, right?
We don't know how many people are listening.
Well, listen, I'll tell you that when I first was applying for the job, I actually did a wiki search on economic development. What exactly is included in that, because that hadn't been my work before. And when I took the position, I immediately started going to the training sessions they had or the national conference, kind of focusing in on the more economic development side, because I'd done a whole lot of community development and communication work before that. And I found that I was able to pick that up, but then every time I think, yeah, I've got this now. When I first took the job, I said, I think I've got the skills to do this. I'd like to continue it on. Well, within a year, I realized there's a whole other layer of skills to learn. And every year that I've been here, I just keep finding, learning what I didn't know and just keep building.
So what do you see some of the largest challenges that you have?
I'm glad you asked that as challenges, because almost every roadblock or difficulty that I run to actually is part of doing the Main Street program. I haven't really run into anything that I never expected that this could be something I'd be working on. But I think the challenge that gets me most often, and I'm interested to kind of dialogue about if this is common to just kind of doing Main Street work or Heart of Biddeford, but it's keeping true to history and values while also moving forward with progress. And in Biddeford's case, that can mean revitalizing the downtown, means often bringing in new people to the state or to the area, new types of businesses, new types of evening entertainment and activities, but still not losing the sense of pride in the history. The people who built those mills still live in, well, not
Right.
literally built them, but worked there for so many years, still live in Biddeford, and this needs to be their community as well. And so how do you, revitalize, make better economic opportunity for people, and at the same time hold on to what people have said they hold dear about Biddeford?
So what kind of problems and issues do you think that you face that other nonprofits would face?
Generally, or in reference
General.
to that question? Well, I think funding. Everybody has to think about funding. It's different from working in, the public sector or private sector. So you have to be creative and come at funding from so many different angles.
Right.
Always working on that. I think probably everybody who comes in here must mention that.
No,
Yeah,
you never
no,
hear
no.
that.
The sometimes fascinating balance of politics. How do you say what you need to say and try to push for progress in an area you believe in, while also balancing that, we're not the government. So how do we influence the local government without, being too pushy that they don't work with us, so being collaborative. And similarly, we don't speak for the community or on behalf of. So how do we constantly, keep the community woven into everything that we do? So I think sort of those political balances are something everybody has to work with. How to balance volunteer involvement with staff work.
That's always tough.
Yeah. The Main Street program is called a volunteer-driven program. So you're supposed to run an organization, but kind of be the hub of a wheel of activity. And so all the Main Street programs have 4 committees, standing committees, and they each have a volunteer who's the chair of those committees. And, we're fortunate that we've been really building those committees up, and they're filled with active people with lots of talents. So they, help chart the course for what we're doing all the time. And my task list never dwindles because there's always somebody new coming in with an idea.
Right.
And how do you say, that's fantastic. Now, how are we going to implement it?
Right.
Not, what a great idea. Now I have a whole new job description,
So putting all these together, I'm sure there's been something that has been extremely difficult for you to do.
I am not sure. I think about my husband at home. He gets to listen to the challenges that I run through. And for 4.5 years, I have loved going to my job because, yes, there are challenges and things I have to think through. But I don't usually run into something that, I feel like there's a wall and I'm not going to be able to figure out a way through it. I think some of that might be because there are so many people involved in Biddeford. If I have a question, I have no problem walking upstairs of our building, to go ask the mayor, and he'll, say, "What are you doing?" And we'll sit and chat.
Right.
Or if I need expertise on economic development or something to do with a park renovation, there are just volunteers who are so involved in the Heart of Biddeford. I feel like I always have somebody to ask. if you said the hardest thing, it might just be making sure to be a person who also has a life outside of working and running things. Because you could, with
Right.
all that enthusiasm and ideas, I could easily work basically constantly.
So do you find, and this is always difficult for executive directors, and we haven't really touched on this in the show, but the balance of life, personal life, work life, family life, and one of the things that used to get my family all the time is when we were in a supermarket. You know where I'm going with this.
I do.
We're walking down the aisle putting our little groceries into the cart, and someone comes up and starts talking work with us.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Everywhere.
you can't say, no, I can't talk to you about it. But,
Right.
it's the boundaries.
It is. My daughter, who is now 7, and certainly when she was a little younger, was always traveling with me. And I'd say, I just have to run into this place or that. And she actually had this shorthand. She said, is this going to be a May place, Mom? Which means the people were going to talk and talk and talk. And she was going to feel like, May. So I kind of give her a warning on a scale of 1 to 10 how long this could take. And it's just, as a daughter of a Main Street manager, apparently that's what you got to be ready for.
Almost any exec of any community-based agency, because you're
right.
always going to see people that you're working with, and for them it's a volunteer, and it's great that they have that energy. But you want a little off time.
You do. I, sometimes choose a different grocery store, or I choose a national chain sometimes to go into because I think I won't run into people.
Nah, doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's great that people feel comfortable coming up to you and want to share and be part of it. So we're at the point of the show where we do our trivia question.
Oh, Lord.
Right before our midpoint identifier. Now, I'm going to share a trade secret with everybody. I usually come in with 2 or 3 different questions, and depending on the reception that I get when I walk in the door is the question that I give. So I got blasted when I got in today.
It wasn't my fault. Deb started it.
Oh, it's always Deb's fault. So we're going to I thought last week was one of the lowest of low trivia questions. It was pretty bad, but this one might surpass that. We ready? Okay.
Are you helping, Deb?
No, Deb's not allowed to help. So I'm going to give you the question. We'll go to our midpoint identifier. I'll repeat the question, then you give me your answer.
All right.
Okay. The Biddeford City Theater is a National Historic Landmark. How many seats are in it?
Ooh, I think I'll have an answer.
Uh-oh. My name is David Unger, and we're on Nonprofit Insider. Nonprofit Insider is on WMPG 90.9 and 104.1 FM community radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. Today we have Delilah Papour, who's the Executive Director of the Heart of Biddeford. And the trivia question today was, the Biddeford City Theater, National Historic Landmark. How many seats are in it?
500.
According to www. Hometown USA, there are 684 seats in the Biddeford City Theater. Added to that, Charlie Chaplin, Al Jolson, W.C. Fields, Abbott and Costello, Fred Astaire, and Roy Rogers, and his trusty horse Trigger are all stars that made personal appearances at the Biddeford City Theater.
Wow.
And you run downtown Biddeford, and you don't know how many seats are in the theater?
Well, it's funny because we always quote it as 500. So, I will
your
be
sources,
updating that. You bet.
Hometown USA. I mean, it's on the internet, so it must be true.
That's what I always say.
So, since you started, what kind of impacts or outcomes have you been able to really measure and say that we have made a difference?
Okay. Well, I started the job as Heart of Biddeford was ending a 2-year-long community developed master planning. And so the last, the first 4 months of my job were fine-tuning those into action plans. And I have been able to, for the last 4 years, basically check off, not just me, everybody that we're working with, 80% of those action plan items. And they're under, things that help make the downtown more aesthetically appealing, increase jobs, open new businesses, and
Okay.
yeah,
I'm going to ask. No, that's fine. But I want to put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
So statistically, how many new jobs have been created?
Okay, so a smart person would have actually brought that piece of paper that said it on it.
I'll take an estimate.
In the 140
Okay.
range. And I actually am a pretty strong believer in not saying there's causation when there's only correlation. I think Heart of Biddeford has been extremely involved in those 140 jobs coming together. But, if it weren't for the city also being involved in something that we organize called the Main Street Challenge, we wouldn't have brought in those businesses and those jobs if there weren't mill owners. Like Doug Sanford owns 17 mill buildings, the Pepperell Mill campus.
Yep.
And he and his staff are certainly bringing in all those folks. I think they are also attracted to the fact that downtown Biddeford is revitalizing and more active. But I guess I don't want to say Heart of Biddeford or Delilah, made those jobs happen. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you bring up a really good point, because when you talk about measurements, it's never an isolated incident. It's always an action and reaction of others that create the measurement. And it's real hard to explain to that. So when you say, how many new jobs did you create? Well, I could put the plan out there, but there's so many other variables that go into that.
Right.
And so many times when you go through an evaluation process, I don't see those variables come into play.
Yeah, well, we are putting together an economic impact report right now, which will probably take, a month or something to actually work on. And we're going to be doing, things that we can say Heart of Biddeford actually should take credit for. We did this, and therefore these results are shown, versus, what are just some of the positive indicators of jobs and business creation and satisfaction in the downtown. But we did do something called the Main Street Challenge and Main Street Challenge Encore, starting about 6 months after I was in the position. And it's a business incentive project where 3 new businesses were awarded $20,000 incentive packages, $10,000 forgivable loan and $10,000 in in-kind services. And so those are ones that we directly recruited, supported to open up, walked through all the processes, and I feel like those are some that we can really say the city invested a total of $30,000 in forgivable loans, and those businesses, the first round alone, invested $90,000 of their own money and brought on 11 new employees. And the second round also is in the $40,000 of leveraged investment, and they have 7 employees as well. So those are some that we can say we did X and Y has come from it. But I think a lot of it, what a Main Street program is about incremental change. And so when our design committee went through the downtown and painted all of the lids of the garbage cans with very attractive, paintings, or when they put a mural in one of the parks or a mosaic in another park, you can't really say we got new jobs in the downtown because of that. But when you add that with people who are getting together now twice a month, once for a donut club and once for our entrepreneurs group, and you add that to the Main Street Challenge and our retention program for businesses, and then you add that to 25 events held in the downtown each year, you start to see that all of those things start to show up as really positive press in the news. And you used to do a web search on Biddeford, and what would come up, you didn't really want that to be your branding statement. And now, more often than not, it's, new businesses open on Main Street in Biddeford, lively entertainment, X, Y, and Z, happening in Biddeford. And that's kind of some of the more of the indicators that we're paying attention to.
If you had to hang your hat on one program, let's say you walk out and you say, I'm retiring tomorrow, what would that one program be?
It would be the Main Street Challenge and Main Street Challenge Encore, because it said to entrepreneurs, Biddeford's a good place to come and start a business. And it enabled some businesses to really invest. The $20,000 that they got enabled them to get much better loans than they would have and really invest in their infrastructure and the capital investments to make a really good business. And when those businesses came in, it actually created a whole new level of business type in downtown. When I was here 4 years ago, We had a lot more, kind of tattoo parlor, head shop, secondhand stores, kind of more of a majority of those. And that doesn't create a very diverse business mix in the downtown. So when Elements Cafe came in, and Biscuits and Company, and retail stores like Tote Road and Desert Moon Leather, it showed businesses that look very nice, are very attractive to enter. You can go from one to the other and, actually have that like strolling Main Street experience, which people hadn't been able to have for a long time.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, while they're there, I remember at Elements, Michael was working behind the counter where he's the barista and bartender sometimes. These two guys came and sat down, and he didn't recognize them, so he said, "What are you doing?" And, "Oh, we're here. We heard, Biddeford kind of has some potential. We're thinking about starting a restaurant." And he said, "Well, go down and talk to Delilah." And I was sitting in my office, and we took a little tour, and they had kind of some restaurant concepts, but I said, "But can I just show you a place that just opened a couple months ago, opened up, and it's the Palace Diner, Maine's oldest diner," and it was empty. And within a week, they'd signed their lease, and they were quoted in the Portland Press saying they got more done in 2 hours in Biddeford than they did in 2 months in Portland. Very pleased about that. And Chad and Greg opened the Palace Diner, and last year they were named top 50 new restaurant in Bon Appetit magazine. And if there hadn't been sort of a landing spot in Biddeford for them to come kind of check out the scene and see who's coming to downtown and then refer to Heart Biddeford, I'm not sure they would have known to take this random turn down this road to find the diner. So a lot of our steps are just small, and they're connecting people, and it's really just building.
And I don't want to wish this on anybody, but if you go back to your office after this and close your doors, what would happen?
And close my doors?
Yeah, and close up shop.
Oh, and close Heart of Biddeford. That's a great question. Especially since, you do kind of want to say, what impact do we have? What if we weren't here? Or, when the city council thinks they don't want to do their annual pledge, you kind of go, well, you make an argument that would have a, consequence. Well, I know there's one consequence, is just that people who have been moved to be involved and engaged and participate would be very upset and disappointed that there wasn't a hub to do that. Most days when I walk in my office, there's 4 different people working on 4 different projects who aren't getting paid, but they want to develop a skill. A guy came in, had no idea how to do InDesign, but I got him, 2 hours of tutorial at Engine up the road, and he's been working on a new map for us for the downtown. And so there's people who want a chance to come in and contribute to the community who wouldn't have that avenue, that I think would be a big disappointment. And then I also think the momentum that we bring. We have a newsletter that goes out every Monday morning to about 2,000 people, and a quarter of those people open it every week. And you have those statistics, and they show that people actually open it, so hopefully they're reading it as well. And they share it on Facebook and Twitter. There wouldn't be a way for people to... there would be a way, people would find a way to communicate, but there's a positive sense of news sharing that we are able to do with people. And anybody who contacts us about something going on in Biddeford can get in our newsletter. It's a free thing, and people say they read that more often than the paper because it's got the news that they need.
Right.
So I think we also serve a function of being... as a nonprofit, we're not the private sector, and we're not the municipal, public sector. We're this sort of middle area that people feel like they can be empowered to do something. If you don't like that the parks are run down, then you're Holly Culleton, one of our volunteers, and you start up the Adopt a Park program. And you find 11 businesses and organizations who want to adopt the 11 parks. And then you put together a monitor group of a couple people from Public Works, and all of a sudden, all of our parks are taken care of.
But if you would close your doors at 5 o'clock today, you wouldn't be able to have some of those programs that you have upcoming, right? Right,
yeah. You wouldn't be able to continue what is in place.
But what's upcoming that you want to share with everevery?
Well, for example, that's so smooth. So smooth I missed it the first time. Swing. She misses. The The closest one is tonight. Art Walk is happening tonight in Biddeford. It's the Biddeford Saco Art Walk that happens on the final Friday, and people can just show up downtown and you'll see where to go, or you can go on to Biddeford Saco Art Walk .org to get the map. And then tomorrow, Heart of Biddeford has our 5K road race, which is really fun, and we picked a flat course this year.
Okay.
And that one, I'm afraid people are going to have to call Heart of Biddeford to register or show up because it's not online anymore. And we'll probably give the number at the end, I bet.
You can give it right
Or
now.
284-8520. You can also find us at heartofbiddeford.org. And then all summer long, we have music in the park. That's 8 weeks of free music in a little pocket park that used to be known as Crack Alley. And fortunately, our design committee worked on it and beautified it, and students from the high school built benches. And now we have music there every week in the summer. And then River Jam Festival coming up in September.
Wow, you're busy.
Yeah, that's just the next few weeks.
There you go. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, what do you think? Do you have any advice about volunteer appreciation? We have a lot of volunteers, and what do you think helps them feel most valued and willing to come back?
I'm a big fan of personal touches. So you can have a big volunteer recognition and everything else, but what do you do on a regular basis? How do you thank your volunteers in a newsletter? How do you recognize the work that a volunteer does? So it's a matter of understanding who your volunteers are, what they're doing, and the impact that they're making. Even though you may be highlighting a volunteer in your newsletter, but do you have a picture of other volunteers doing things? Mm-hmm. And do you use the word volunteers and recognize that this work couldn't be done without them?
Nice.
So it's that kind of personal touch that I like. Think about it as fundraising. When, you touch your donors 7 times over a year, you should touch your volunteers 7 times over the year.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. And then the other thing is, how do you move those folks into becoming donors, because they know your organization better than anybody else, and they've made that commitment.
It's true.
It doesn't matter the size of the gift, but to say that they've made a gift is important. And a lot of organizations won't ask their volunteers because they're afraid.
And they already give so much.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's another couple bucks, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that's my perception
Yeah,
on it.
those are great. Thank you.
And if someone wanted to make a donation to you, how would they do that?
On the website, heartofbiddeford.org, we have a donate button right up at the top.
Okay. And they can call you at?
207, of course, 284-8520.
Well, thank you for being on the show. This was a hoot.
Thank you so much.
Next week,